Hello, this is Group 4. My name is Yangzom, and here with me are my team members, Baruch and Uni. Our topic for this project is on content-based image retrieval using VGG-16, color histogram, and histogram of oriented gradients. I'm going to talk about the outline for this presentation. We're going to start off by talking about introduction and related works. Then we will proceed to talk about the proposed work. Under proposed work, we will talk about benchmark dataset, algorithms, and implementation for the 3 content-based image retrieval techniques under exploration in this project. After that, we will talk about experiments and results. In this section, the performance of the 3 content-based image retrieval systems is evaluated based on different evaluation metrics. We will conclude the proposed work section by talking about the prototyped system, along with which a demo of the system will also be presented. Finally, we will finish off our presentation with conclusion and future work. For the introduction, content-based image retrieval is a process that allows retrieval of similar images to a query image from an image dataset based on the contents of the image, such as color, shape, and texture. This is different from other image retrieval techniques that analyze image metadata, such as tags and description of the image. The most important step in content-based image retrieval system is called feature extraction. Feature extraction is the process of extracting useful features from an image. In content-based image retrieval systems, feature extraction is carried out in both the query image and the images in the dataset. After feature extraction, the next step is to do similarity comparison between the feature vectors in the image dataset with that of the query image in order to retrieve similar images. The main objective of the project is to prototype an interactive and user-friendly content-based image retrieval system that is efficient with high retrieval accuracy. In this project, 3 different content-based image retrieval techniques, namely VGG-16, color histogram, and the histogram of oriented gradients, are explored on the Wang dataset. The retrieval performance of each of the techniques is evaluated based on retrieval accuracy, precision, recall, and F1 score. The best performing technique based on these metrics is used to run in the backend of the prototyped system. Next, Uni will talk about related works.
So CBIR is desirable because searches that rely purely on metadata are dependent on annotation quality and are very prone to human error. So different content-based image retrieval techniques have been implemented with varying levels of precision and accuracy. Many recent studies have conducted CBIR by retrieving images based on image features such as color, texture, and shape. There exist multiple works on exploring color to obtain image features. Kumar has proposed a work to process CBIR using other image features, including color and texture. Color and texture features are extracted using wavelet transformation and color histogram in his paper. It was found that the proposed system demonstrated fast retrieval accuracy on the Wang image database. Image color features have also been explored with shape descriptors in retrieving images. Velmurugan proposes an approach using a combination of feature extraction techniques, including a histogram of oriented gradients and color histograms. The paper that we base our histogram of oriented gradients on by Dalal et al. Also researched HOG for human detection. And it focuses on the structure of this object and extracts information of the edges magnitudes and orientations in order to find human shapes in different postures. Additionally, various researchers have investigated a more recent and more powerful method, the deep learning method of implementing CBIR. For instance, there is the residual network or ResNet50 approach to build a CBIR system by Ananda Babu. ResNet is an artificial network that uses connections to jump over layers in the image to build a deeper neural network and find an optimized number of layers to negate the vanishing gradient problem. This algorithm works by extracting image feature based on ResNet50, and these filtered features are stored as vectors of features in a database. Finally, images with the highest similarity are retrieved. Given this, we decided to go with the VGG-16 approach to extract the features of an image. According to Maggi's paper, the VGG-16 produces vastly superior results for a variety of databases, and it outperforms many contemporary CBIR systems. All right, so for our proposed work, moving on to our proposed work, this project falls under category 4, prototyping a system or some components of a system using existing techniques. We decided to build an interactive content-based image recovery system using multiple techniques. The application will allow users to input image query and retrieve identical images from our benchmark dataset and display the results through a web interface. The objectives of the project are as follows. Firstly, to understand the different CBIR models through literature reviews, implement these models from the ground up by leveraging pre-trained models, and finally, creating an interactive prototype with a UI of the best performing model. The three algorithms we decided to explore are VGG-16, histogram of oriented gradients, and the color histogram. So the benchmark data set we decided to use is the Wang data set, created by Jia Li and James Wang. This project uses the Wang data set for its prototype because it consists of 1,000 images grouped into 10 categories with 100 images per category. The image names are numbered from 1 to 1,000, with their names specifying the category they belong to. Labels were created for each image for evaluation purposes. Each name was divided by 100, and the floor of the quotient was retrieved to return a number from 0 to 9, denoting its category. This is only used to determine the evaluation metrics for the different methods and is not relevant to algorithms and implementations. I will pass it on to Brooke to introduce the VGG-16 algorithm.
Thank you, Uni. So as Uni just discussed in the previous section, our work mainly explores three image classification techniques, which are VGG-16, color histogram, and histogram of oriented gradients. So we'll kick this section off by me talking about the VGG-16 architecture in a little bit of detail. So VGG-16 is a state-of-the-art deep learning convolutional neural network architecture that consists of 16 weighted convolutional layers. So it's one of the well-known CNN architectures for producing superior results for image classification. The VGG-16 architecture is mainly made up of three layers: the convolutional layer, pooling layer, and fully connected layer. So the VGG-16 architecture has 13 convolutional layers, which are colored in blue in the figure here aside. And it also has 5 max pooling layers, which are the squares marked in red, and 3 fully connected layers, which are the squares colored in green. So the 13 convolutional layers and 3 fully connected layers add up to the number 16, which gives us the total weighted convolutional layers, hence the name VGG-16. So the main idea behind this architecture is to run an image through these stacks of convolutional layers and extract deep features of that image in the form of neurons or vectors. So with these layers stacked up on top of each other, as shown in the figure here, we will actually get a fully functional CNN architecture that is able to extract deep features. The workings of the VGG-16 architecture is a little complex as it consists of a sophisticated deep learning concept. But in this slide, I'll try to explain in a step-by-step manner as to how the model takes in an input and an input image and produces a feature equivalent of it. So firstly, the input image is first converted to a fixed size of 224 by 224 RGB image. When we say RGB image here, it just means that the image is going to be represented in a 3D matrix with the innermost matrix representing the channel of each pixel of the image. So once that step is done, prior to feeding the image to the stacks of the convolutional layers, VGG-16 first pre-processes the input image by subtracting the mean RGB value from each pixel for normalization purposes. Once the image has gone through that pre-processing, it will then be fed to the first stack of 2 convolutional layers, where each layer uses 64 convolutional filters with an exceedingly small receptive field, which is a 3 by 3 matrix. So the output from these first 2 convolutional layers is then passed through a max pooling layer. So in this layer, it halves the size of the image height and width, but doubles the channel, as can be seen in the figure here. So you can see it. Initially, the image was 224 by 224, but once it passes through the first max pooling, it halves the size by and becomes 112 by 112, right? And in that process, it actually doubles the filter size from 64 to 128. And this keeps on going up until the the fourth convolutional layer, where the filter size is 512. Once that filter size is reached, it is no more doubled. So the output from the first two convolutional layers the output from the max pooling layer is then passed to a similar second stack of two convolutional layers, which is this one right here, where each layer now uses 128 filters instead of 64, since it's doubled. And the output from the second stack of the convolutional layers is then passed through a second max pooling, which again halves the size of the image, height and width, but doubles the channel of the image. The output from the second max pooling is then passed to the third stack of the three convolutional layers, where each layer now uses 256 filters, making the output size of the image after passing through another max pooling at around 28 by 28 by 512, as said earlier. And the output from this step is once again fed to the fourth and fifth stack of three convolutional layers, where each layer now uses 512 filters, making the output size of the image after passing through two other max pooling layers at about 7 by 7 by 512, right? So finally, the output from these last 2-3 stack convolutional layers is passed to three fully connected layers denoted by the green markers right here. The first two fully connected stacks produce neurons of length 4096, and the final layer, which is this one, produces a neuron of length 1000, which corresponds to the number of categories of the ImageNet data set. So the neurons of length 4096 will be then considered to be the feature vector of the image. This is what's assumed to be the final output of the VGG-16 architecture. So now my group mates, Yangzong, will take you through the color histogram technique in detail after this.
Color is an important feature of an image. Color histogram is the distribution of colors in a three-dimensional RGB color space. In this project, features of the image are extracted using the HSV color space of an image. HSV stands for hue, saturation, and value. This is done by using the color_BGR to HSV color space module that is available in Python. It converts BGR to HSV. So how does color histogram work? First, images are read from one dataset and their features are extracted using the HSV color space of an image. The feature vectors are extracted in Python to convert the BGR color space to HSV color space. The extracted feature vectors are a 3D color histogram with 8 bins per color channel, namely hue, saturation, and value color spaces. Now, with 8 bins per color channel, the final feature vector of an image would have a dimension of 8 times 8 times 8, which is equal to 512. In the end, a color histogram feature vector is obtained for each image. The feature vector is normalized, flattened into a one-dimensional array, and then stored in a local list. Classification label for the image dataset is obtained from the image name and then divided by 100 to produce a label value in the range of 0 to 9, representing each of the 10 classes in the one dataset. The one dataset is split into 80% training and 20% testing dataset on the feature vectors. Now using k-neighbors classifier with k is equal to 5 from scikit-learn, the model is trained to retrieve similar images using the cosine similarity measure. Finally, the model is evaluated using the 4 metrics, namely accuracy, precision, recall, and F1 score. Next, Uni will talk about histogram of oriented gradients.
So for this part, we must first understand what a gradient is. So an image gradient is a directional change in the intensity or color of an image. It is one of the fundamental building blocks of image processing and is commonly used in edge detection. The HOG feature descriptor counts the occurrences of gradient orientation in localized portions of an image. The essential thought behind the histogram of oriented gradients descriptor is that local object appearance and shape within an image can be described by the distribution of intensity gradients or edge directions. It differs from edge detection by also providing the orientation. So the first step in working the HOG is to first pre-process the image. So the image needs to be resized. A ratio of 1:2 is preferred, but 64:128 is the standard dimensions, as they will be divided into 8:8 and 16:16 patches. The image is also converted into grayscale, as HOG does not accept RGB images. The next step is to calculate the gradient for every pixel in the image. So gradients are the small change in the X and Y directions. We will first get the pixel values for this patch, which, as you can see in the table, is the 85 red. To determine the gradient in the X direction, we need to subtract the value from the left of the pixel value to the value from the right. Similarly, we calculate the gradient in the Y direction by subtracting the top value by the bottom value. And you can see there that g of x is equal to 11 and g of y is equal to 8. The magnitude would be higher when there is a sharp change in intensity, such as around the edges of an image. So for the next step, we'll need to actually calculate the magnitude and the orientation of these pixels. Using the gradients we calculated in the last step, we will now be using the Pythagoras theorem to find the magnitude and angle of each pixel. So for every pixel value, we have the total gradient and the orientation. We now need to generate the histogram using these gradients and orientations. So in step 4, for each pixel, we will check the orientation and store the frequency of the orientation values in the form of a 9:1 matrix. So for each orientation, the pixels are divided into bins, and each value that falls into one of those bins is put into there. So if we divide the image into 8:8 cells and generate the histograms, we will get a 9:1 matrix for each cell. Next, in step 5, we create the histogram of gradients. So the histogram of gradients is created patch by patch. So it's not generated for the whole image. Instead, the image is divided into 8:8 cells, and then the histogram of oriented gradients is computed for each cell. By doing so, we get features for the smaller patches, which in turn represent the whole images. We can also change this value there from 8:8 to 16:16 or 32:32. Finally, we need to normalize the gradients in the 16:16 cell. Although we already have the HOD features created for the 8:8 cells of the image, the gradients of the image are sensitive to overall lighting. This means that for a particular picture, some portion of the image would be very bright as compared to other portions. We cannot completely eliminate these brightnesses from the image, but we can reduce this lighting variation by normalizing the gradients by taking 16:16 blocks. When these are combined, we get a total of 3,780 features for each image. The implementation will be the same as the color histogram as discussed previously. So using KN neighbors and cosine similarity. Next, I'll pass the stage to Yangzong.
Now I'm going to talk about experiments. I will start off by talking about the experiment metrics and then talk about the comparison of the experiment results. Finally, I will present an evaluation of the experiment result. To compare the performance of the content-based image retrieval techniques that we have implemented, we have decided to use the following evaluation metrics. The first metric is accuracy. Accuracy of a CBIR system provides how accurate the similarity between the query image and the retrieved images is. The second metric is recall. Recall is used to calculate the number of similar images retrieved by a search from the total number of existing similar images. It provides the number of most similar images that were recalled. The third metric is precision. The precision of an image retrieval query, the precision of an image provides the number of similar images divided by the total number of images retrieved by the search. The last metric that we have used is F1 score. The F1 score combines the values obtained for precision and recall metrics to compare the performance of the image retrieval systems. In this slide, I'm going to talk about the performance evaluation of the 3 different content-based image retrieval techniques on the test data which consists of 20% of the dataset from one database. Figure 3 presents accuracy and precision scores of the content-based image retrieval using VGG16 color histogram and histogram of oriented gradient. As you can see, VGG16 produced extremely accurate image retrieval with an accuracy of 0.9, whereas the accuracy of image retrieval using HOG is found to be at a low of 0.19. Color histogram performed with intermediate accuracy level at 0.69. Similarly, when it comes to precision score, VGG16 has the highest precision score, whereas HOG has the lowest precision, with color histogram performing at the middle. Figure 4 presents the recall and F1 score of the 3 CBIR techniques. As can be seen, VGG16 produced the best score for both recall and F1 score, whereas HOG for both recall and F1 score is the lowest. Next, I will present an evaluation of the experiment result. So why did VGG16 perform the best? The reason VGG16 performed best on retrieving similar images could be credited to the way it handles feature extraction. It can extract deep feature vectors by running it through multiple stacks of convolutional layers. Why did HOG perform the worst? HOG handles feature extraction by processing the shape and edge features of the images. This leads to limiting the calculation of feature vectors based on only the gradient and orientation of the parts of the image, producing a very weak performance on retrieving similar images to the query image. Finally, why did a color histogram perform intermediate? Color histogram uses the HSV color space of an image to extract image feature vectors. Due to the presence of colorful images in the Wang dataset, color histogram can perform better than HOG. On the other hand, if the image dataset were to contain only black and white images, color histogram may not perform as well. Next, Baruch will talk on the prototyped system.
Thank you, Youngzo. So since our experiment proved that VGG16 outperformed the other two CBIR techniques, we decided to build our prototype with the VGG16 model running in the backend to provide users with the best and most accurate CBIR technique. Our system diagram for the prototype is here as illustrated in the figure in this slide. As we can see, the system has three major components worth discussing about. These are the front end, back end, and storage components. In the next few slides, I'll take you through a brief explanation of each of the components and how they contribute to the overall system. Under the front end, we have the UI. So where the UI is where the users will be presented with an interface that allows them to input a query image. The UI was built using an industry-famous JavaScript library called React.js. These three screenshots on the slide show the different states of the UI during the lifetime of the system's interaction with the user. Screenshot number 1 illustrates the initial state of the UI where users will be prompted to input their query image. Screenshot number 2 shows how the UI looks once the user uploaded their query image and the system processes their request. And finally, screenshot number 3 shows the state of the UI after the processing is done and similar images to the QI are returned back to the user. Our storage component is in the form of a file system within our local server. These basically just means we have 3 local files within our server storing the Wang image dataset, feature vectors of each image in the dataset, and the uploaded QI. So the Wang dataset was downloaded from the internet source and moved to the /static/row images file path, while the feature vectors obtained from running the images through the VGG16 model is stored in the /static/image features file path. And finally, the uploaded QI from the user is also stored under the /static/query image file path as shown in the figure here aside. Moving on to the backend component. So in this side of the prototype, we used Flask and a RESTful API to implement our backend logic and connect it to the UI. As discussed earlier, the CBIR method we integrated in the prototype is the VGG16. This means under the backend, the major subcomponents of the system are the feature extraction and similarity measure. In the feature extraction phase, we initialized a pre-trained VGG16 model and passed all our images from one dataset to obtain the feature vectors of each of the images. Subsequently, the extracted features of each image were then stored back to the local storage, which is the /static/image features directory, for the purposes of conducting similarity measures later on. It is also essential to note that the user submitted the query image will have to go through the same phase before proceeding to the second phase. Once feature extraction phase is complete for both the dataset and the QI, we proceeded to implementing the second phase of the backend, which is the similarity measure. This phase practically implements our chosen similarity measure metrics to calculate the distance between the QI features and the dataset features. The similarity measure chosen for our prototype was the Manhattan distance, or L1 norm. The formula is shown down below for 2D vectors. So essentially, it is the same idea, but for our case, the distance was calculated between vectors of length 4096, since the features that were extracted from the images had that much length. So the reason for choosing Manhattan distance over, say, the most famous Euclidean distance was because of the high dimensionality of the feature vectors outputted by the VGG model. So once the similarity measure phase was completed, the image with the lowest 5 distance score were deemed to be the closest images to the query image, and thus were returned back to the user. So now, before proceeding to the next section, we will be showing a quick demo of how our system works. So this is the user interface. As we can see, a user will be prompted to choose a query image. So we can choose, say, for instance, a bus, and we can upload the image and click on retrieve images. The system will process our image and finally retrieve the 5 most closest images to our query image. And it also displays the Manhattan distance score in ascending order. Yep. And we can also do another quick run. Say this time we give it a dinosaur, upload query image, and hit on retrieve. And as we can see, we'll be getting the 5 most similar images to the QI with the respective Manhattan distance score attached to them. All right, so next Uni will be taking us through the conclusion and future work section.
All right, so this paper proposed 3 different feature extraction models: color histogram, VGG-16, and histogram of oriented gradients. Of those methods, the HOG performed worse, with an accuracy and precision of only 0.197 and 0.365, compared to the much higher values of color histogram and VGG-16. VGG-16 also outperformed both methods in recall and F1 score. However, it has the slowest runtime, taking over 50 minutes to extract the features from 1,000 images. And this is compared to 8 minutes from HOG and just a few minutes for color histogram. For future work, we can perform feature fusion with HOG and color histogram to increase the efficiency of HOG, or we can look into performing VGG-16 with more layers. Thank you.